So then we have the last speaker for SaaS story, Parash from Wingify. Where is Parash? Oh, here. You're hiding. Oh, sure. Oh,
It's like a bunch of pictures. Of Wingify, and we've heard amazing personal stories from Avlesh and Neeraj. And like all personal stories, the whole inspiration of how Wingify happened is different from what Neeraj and Avlesh described. So this is just a bunch of pictures that represents how. Am I audible at the back? Hello? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So this is just a bunch of pictures that show how Wingify evolved, where the idea came from. So the whole agenda of this talk, as Suresh briefed, is to talk about how it went from an idea to first 100 customers, and from first 100 customers to 10K, 100K and beyond. So I'm going to take you through this presentation, and I apologize in advance if you've seen these slides before. Some of these slides are on the internet, so I'll bore you with the same story if you have heard me before. But feel free to ask questions later. Happy to talk about it. So, so Wingify is, so we were talking about this company as I said, Wingify, and it really started in 2009, and and this is a journey that started with me writing a few lines of code and not knowing what scale would it achieve ultimately, because honestly that was not the end outcome. I was not really doing it to scale it in a big way, and it just started with me coding, opening up a notepad, just writing code for a lot of months, and then realizing that it's become something really complicated, as you will see. But to this to present day, a little bit of Wingify, we have a product called VWO, and VWO it lets you be a scientist on your website. So if you want to find out how to improve your website and then go ahead and improve it for higher sales and conversions and signups, that is where you use VWO, which is short form for Visual Website Optimizer. So today that's our main product, although we're working on a number of new products as well. But we are 80 people, about 4,000 customers, and we recently opened up a new office in New York, but primarily based out of Delhi. And we might be somewhat an exception in a number of other speakers, like we've been bootstrapped, so never raised a single penny of external funding. And sorry? That's why we wanted you to speak. Sure. So any questions about funding, bootstrapping, I might be able to give a good perspective on bootstrapping. And so what is that cost? So cost pi by 2 is really means is 0, right? Yeah. So how did this happen? I wouldn't say it was planned like a lot of startups. In hindsight, it remains, it seems obvious and the dots get connected, but I would really attribute a lot of success to just luck and happenstance. But again, like most people say, if you aren't trying, luck cannot do anything. Luck would only make its mark if you're just trying again and again and again. And out of 100 times, just out of random chance, one time you may succeed, and it just happened to be that one time with Wingify. So just very brief about how genesis of Wingify happened. I started coding really early on, and I started coding in that old school Visual Basic 6.0, where you would drag and drop controls and make very nice little cute applications. So that is something I started doing in my 8th standard, and yeah, I don't know what's happening. Yeah. So that's what I started doing, and that is when I realized programming is my first love. And when kids of my age were playing cricket, I was just playing around with Visual Basic, making calculators and other such trivial applications. But that just got me hooked, and I think in my 11th standard I came across this excellent book called Founders at Work. So this was a book that was released, I think, around 2000 or 1999, and it has interviews by a lot of Silicon Valley founders. So it has interviews by Google, Yahoo, PayPal, and a lot of other people. And what was really interesting is because since this was a time period of 1999 and 2000, it gives a lot of intimate insight into what goes on when Yahoo was getting founded, or what went on when Google was getting founded. So I was just inspired by that, and I realized that just using a computer and their ideas, people have been able to build such large businesses. And if they could do, why can't I? So it was a very irrational belief, and that just got hooked me into this whole startup thingy. And in college, I majored in biotechnology, but I was really involved in the analytics part of it. And analytics mean doing a lot of simulations on biological problems to computers. So all of that just got me very interested in analytics. And alongside, I was doing, so Wingify is not like the first thing that worked out for me. Like I said, Wingify is really a lucky break just that happened despite of me. And throughout my college and school days, I tried to do a lot of startups. And all of these startups I did with now my wife, Akanksha. She's here as well, founding her own startup. But all of them failed. I wouldn't attribute that to Akanksha. But I would rather attribute it to the fact that we were naive in college. And it's very interesting when, as someone who's trying to do a startup, we tend to solve problems that we are aware of. And that's by very definition of it. That's why we see a lot of people who are still in college, they're trying to do things like internship portals and stuff around the problems they know. And that's exactly the sort of stuff I was also doing in college. And as it appears that startups succeed by the market opportunity which exists and not really the idea you have. And market opportunity for a lot of these college student-oriented startups is very limited. So it was a very slow realization that I was just trying to solve something which people didn't really want to solve. And that was my learning, that I was building things that nobody wanted, and on top of it, I wasn't really marketing that. So I was stuck in that engineer's mindset of getting a really cool idea and thinking it would change the world, locking myself in the room for weeks and weeks, building it, and then realizing nobody really cares about it. And so I got interested in marketing, started reading more about Google Analytics, SEO, AdWords, and stuff like that. And that is when I realized, this is very slow realization, that how do we merge marketing with data, and how do we merge marketing with optimization, since these two were my interests. So Wingify was really first sort of the startup that I did, which was not idea oriented. So this was more sort of a thing where I realized that, hey, I think I'm expert at analytics, and I'm starting to gain more and more understanding about marketing. So what could we do in this area that would make money? So the agenda was really simple. I'm expert at something. Let's try to see how do we make money out of it, rather than like my previous startup, just trying to solve a problem nobody wanted to do. So I started commuting and started working on the part side. And I think what I did well, and that I would attribute our current state of being able to run Wingify in a bootstrapped manner, is because I didn't quit my job in day one and say, I'll build this. So I started moonlighting, and I declared or I just told the company I was working at that I'm working at this thing on the side, and they were really cool with that. And I only quit my job when I had enough conviction that this thing could work on. And that was the seed of this bootstrap mindset, that not really having to rely on external funding, yeah, next slide. So this is the first version of the Wingify platform. So I called it platform, and I called it a lot of things, but people didn't really agree. And even with the first platform of Wingify, it took about 8 months of coding. And the whole idea of Wingify was, I said, let's just put everything I know about marketing into one single platform, and people will die for it. So you can see there's so many sort of buzzwords out there. I was calling it something like flexible real-time targeting and advanced optimization engine and stuff like that. And next, so this is how the first version of this Wingify platform looked like. And this is literally the first dashboard that a user would see after the user would log in. And now I look back, and it just seems so obvious that who would have made any sense out of such a dashboard. It just had no guidance to the user. But at that point of time, being an engineer, I thought this is something people would drool over. So I worked for 8 months, released it on Hacker News, and this is the feedback I got. They just tore it down very badly. They said, I can't understand it. What do you really mean by real-time optimization framework? Blah and blah and blah. And I mean things like jargon overload. It was very painful because I had invested 8 and 9 months, and while commuting from Delhi to Gurgaon, which is like 4 hours of daily commute. So I was quite disappointed, needless to say. And disappointment would be like a very small word. I really wanted to call it quits and just become a monk or something, because this was my 4th attempt at doing something, and I thought that I was generally a smart person, right? I mean, I was doing well in academics. It was a very humbling moment that no matter what you consider of yourself, the market and the people is someone you have to really please. But I'll use a cliche here. But I did believe that that changed a lot of things for me. I realized that what didn't really work out had a lot of things to teach to me. And then and this was not a teaching that I got all by myself. So there is amazing forums. So just like Avlesh was mentioning, Quora probably worked well for him. So Hacker News is something which worked really well for me, not from the say a sales or marketing point of view, but really from a customer feedback point of view. So on Hacker News, this is an amazing community, just like the community which iSpirit is building here, where people go out of their way to help each other. And that is where, in spite of people hating the product that I had built in over 8 months, people were really helpful in suggesting that you should focus on a specific problem rather than trying to solve everything at once. Why don't you just pick one problem and do it really, really well and better than anyone else in the world? And again, second point of usability and user onboarding, it might seem like a very simple or watered down word, but if you're selling to SMB, startups, mid-sized businesses, user onboarding is really the salesperson you have. After a person lands on your landing page is the salesperson. There's no way, I mean, if I was expecting that people would click a very nice, cute little help icon that I had on the dashboard on the top right, but nobody does that. People's attention span are really from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, and if your product doesn't really help them, they have 50 other tabs on their dashboard. And yeah, I mean, the third big lesson was, and that was like I've internalized now, and our entire company has internalized that we shouldn't be coding in isolation. That was a big mistake. So all of that, I just said, fuck this shit, 8 months is hardly anything. Threw away the entire Wingify code and just thought, let's focus on A/B testing as a specific feature and make it better. And that is the genesis of Visual Website Optimizer. And again, in the next slide, you will see it was a complete hack, the first version. So I said there's nothing to lose, so let's just spend 1 more month trying to see if something could work. So I just stole, begged, and borrowed a lot of things. For example, the logo was really Visual Website Optimizer written in Times New Roman, and the website was sort of, the design was stolen from 37 Signals, because obviously they know how to do SaaS. And my app design was purchased $5 from Theme Forest. So all of that hacked together, but I solved just one core problem of A/B testing, because that is what I got, that if people don't relate to my approach of A/B testing, nothing else matters. So people don't bother about logos, people don't bother about the colors you are using unless the core problem is not solved. And luckily, the people related to the approach of A/B testing that I followed, and this is how sort of got first 100 customers. So the initial bunch of people who were giving feedback on Hacker News, I then involved them from day one when I was building Visual Website Optimizer. So even before I wrote first piece of code for Visual Website Optimizer, I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing about Visual Website Optimizer. Do you think it's in the right direction? And slowly and steadily, these 50 bunch of initial users, I started involving them, and those became, say, the initial set of customers. Uh, so my growth strategy, and I was doing all of this pretty much alone while I was still having a job, a full-time job. Uh, but my growth strategy was very much concentrated on these three pillars, or I should call them meerkats. One was rapid iteration. Since I was doing it alone and I was coding it myself, if and initially the whole idea was, the survival bit. If a customer asked for something, or we didn't have customers. If a user asked for something, I would iterate it on the same day and just give that a very delightful feature the next day. And the first version was also exclusive beta, and this meant that it's not like anybody or everybody could have signed up for it. So I just said that I put up a nice little form where people had to request access to Visual Website Optimizer, and they had to tell how are they going to use Visual Website Optimizer. And that again gave a good stream of feedback. So there were things that I hadn't realized if I had never asked right there on the sign-up form, how are you intending to use Visual Website Optimizer. But the biggest thing really worked was this content marketing, previous slide, yeah. Content marketing, and again with content marketing, a lot of people think they can sort of hire a content marketer and outsource that, and let's just write 5 articles and it'll be it. But it doesn't really work that way. There's so much content now, and at that point of time, there was again a lot of content that putting out a blog post is just not cutting it. So as a founder, you have to pour your heart out into educating the market on what the product is about. Again, it might seem like a lesson or a teaching that has been repeated again and again, but the key gist is that I wrote a lot of content. In fact, initially, even today in our blog, we have about more than 150 posts all by myself. But that is where you can truly, as a founder, can sell the vision of the company or the product by writing lots of content. So I wrote lots of content, submitted on sites like Smashing Magazine and other places, and they picked it up because I was not talking about the product but about the problem it solved. Yeah, and then I met so Parash, my business partner and our CTO. He's from the same college, and I'm incredibly lucky to have him, as my business partner. So he was at Oxford University, and I started showing this, and I was still just doing this on the side. I was having a full-time job. So he started taking more and more interest from remotely from Oxford in UK, and eventually he came back and joined as a partner. So 5 months into free beta, we had about 1,000 free users. I had 0 social life, and then I had enough, and that is when I quit my full-time job. I said I can't just take it anymore. I'll probably just faint. And 2 months after quitting the job, we had about 1,000 plus registered free users. And that is when we launched free plans for Visual Website Optimizer. Again, it's an incredibly hard problem on what pricing it should be. I still don't have a perfect answer. But on the first day, we had 10 paying customers. And it was a great feeling because quitting my job and having no customers, that was like typical questions by parents, friends, and families like, are you crazy? It's like just quitting your job and not even any idea of raising funds and so on and so forth. It was just like sitting at home doing nothing. And people, my grandmother was asking like, what do you do on computers, right? I mean, they read somewhere that some hackers got arrested by police and they were really scared about it. So this first 10 customers, which is some real revenue, was a breath of fresh air, and it did convince that, okay, now, I mean, we'll get some, this guy is not like sort of a mad person, is going to get something. And so the initial goal was really simple one. Since this was 4th or 5th attempt of doing something, I just wanted to prove that I could make some money online. I read so many stories of Google, PayPal, Yahoo, and whatnot, where people had made so much of money, and here I was like trying again and again and again, and not having a single idea succeed and not having made any money at all. So my goal was simple, to prove to my parents that I could make 50,000 per month, which was my salary at the point I was working. And luckily, on the first month, made 4 times that. and that was quite a good moment, proud moment for my parents. And and yeah, from there, so that's how like the first very initial 100 customers, but after that it picked steam. So one thing that again ironically worked in favor was of us, that we didn't have any investors, so we didn't have any sort of traditional ideas of how do we scale. So that's like a constraint, but also a blessing, because we had to learn ourselves. So we had to just invent and do things along the way. I mean, I'm sure if there was an investor, we would have scaled much faster than my own personal evolution as an entrepreneur. So, and that could have been disastrous. I mean, hiring, say, a VP of sales very early on, when I myself haven't learned how to do business or how to take sales calls or things like that. So it was really essential for me and my evolution from an engineer to a business person, and only then I think scaling made sense. But this is all what we did. Spurs took care of engineering, and I started taking care of a lot of sales and marketing, and revenue started growing. And yeah, yeah. Next line. And then Spurs came back, joined as a full-time, and that is when we took our first real office. So I was working all alone from home for about a year, and the first office, since we were bootstrapped, was literally just one table where 3 people were sitting. But 18 months into existence, we hit our first $1 million cumulative in revenue, hired our first employee, took an office, and today we are very lucky to have a lot of brands as our customers. And even today we are learning a lot of things. I mean, the challenges at this scale were are really different from the challenges we had initially. I mean, today we sort of think about selling differently to enterprises, think differently to selling to SMBs, and the approaches that work for enterprises completely different from the approaches for SMBs. But early on, we didn't really know anything, and so I guess this evolution just keeps on happening. It's never done. Even I see, even if we scale 10x from here, the nature of challenges will be completely different. Yeah, yeah. I think this is where we can take maybe Q&A. And this is some of the lessons that worked really well. So I'm happy to talk about any specific things around these points. Yeah.
Okay, guys, questions? Yep, there is one right there.
How were you doing onboarding initially when you had those first 10 to 100 customers, and how has that changed now? As in, I'm assuming it's changed now.
So when we were doing this for initial customers, we had like a single onboarding flow. So if in other had a single user persona, and our persona was really a marketer from a small business or a startup founder. But today, onboarding really means understanding that if there are 100 potential leads or 100 potential free trials, those are really comprised of different user personas, and their needs and the way they perceive your product is really different. So that is where we sort of try to detect or ask what user persona a particular free trial belongs to, whether it is an agency, whether that's an enterprise, or whether it's a marketer or a product manager, and customize the onboarding according to that. Because a product manager might want to use your product to optimize for usability, while a marketer might want to use it to optimize for conversions. Yeah. So it just sounded like English, and got a cheap domain name, $350.
Okay.
Yeah. I later realized probably it means something while you're cooking, Like
yeah, but I'm more curious. Why not raise funding? Because what is the reluctance, or what is the story behind there?
So
why only bootstrap? I understand you bootstrap till some point in time. That's important. Meaning you have to do it anyway, right? So, but after that you got traction. Then isn't it good to get? There's a huge market out there. And isn't it good thing to basically get money, push the pedal on marketing, sales, and grow the company massively?
So very early on, we didn't need to do bootstrapping because the cost was really my time, and the revenues was probably 10x or 20x of what my raw time was really worth. And that has always been the case, that we have always scaled along with revenues and never sort of consciously wanted to, surpass the cost that we are. So, I mean, at Wingify, we follow sort of this thumb rule, because with bootstrap companies, and I guess that's true with most companies, but with funded companies, that's less a case. How much should you invest in growth versus how much of a buffer for that rainy day should you have? I mean, that's like one of the topmost priorities as a CEO I have. Like if tomorrow our revenues drop to zero as a bootstrap company, you really don't want to be in a situation where you say, hey guys, we can't afford to do business anymore. So I had this thumb rule of having enough cash in the bank to sustain for about 8 to 12 months, and if we have that amount of cash, everything else goes into growth of the company. And the reason now we are not sort of in favor of raising funding is because funding is like both a blessing and not so good thing as well. And not so good thing is because you really get morally obligated, if not legally obligated, to pay back what you have taken for. And that means with investors, the perspective on giving back returns in a particular time frame changes. I mean, I'm all in for giving back money back to investors, but if it is time bound with like 5 to 6 years, and if at that point of time your business is not doing well, you are really sort of in a very bad situation. As people say, if things are going right, the CEO or founder is in control, but if things are not going right, the investors are in control. So with Wingify now, we have a vision of sort of making India known for making quality software products. And that's a very long journey. Silicon Valley took about 40 years in producing companies like Google. Say Microsoft started in 1974, Apple started in 1976. And they have had this cumulative learning over last 35, 40 years. And that is why there's so much innovation is happening there, because people have seen those cycles. And if that sort of stuff has to happen in India, if India has to produce world-class global software product companies, someone has to have a right. But we don't want to be in a position that 5 years down the lane, investors say, hey, we'll sell off Wingify because you guys are not doing great. Apple had its lows as well. It almost got bankrupt, but they are now the world's most valuable company. So more than financial outcome, it's just more on the control of the company that gives this really confidence of having to remain bootstrapped. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? There is one right there. There are 2, 3 hands going up.
Just curious to know, what is your biggest source of customers? Where do they come from?
So about 40% of our customers come from US, and then it's UK and Western Europe. India, we hardly have any customers in India, very less. Yeah.
There is one on the back, yeah. Can you give it to George also after that?
I'll finish my question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation. As the company has evolved, has content marketing continued to keep pace with the, like, as a source of customers, or has it tapered off and you had to build new sources of getting customers?
Now at Wingify, marketing is very user-centric, and by user-centric, I mean we clearly recognize that our user base or the target customer is comprised of different personas. So even within, say, small or medium-sized businesses, we realize that the way a marketer thinks is really different from a way a startup founder thinks. Early on, a lot of my thinking, and hence the marketing team's thinking, since I was the marketing team, got clouded because all I was reading about was a lot of startup articles, a lot of things on Hacker News, and so on and so forth. So I was so much entrenched in the startup world because I thought that is the entire thing, and a lot of people make decisions the same way I make decisions. But now we've realized that, say, there's so many marketers out there who don't read content at all. You know, they or there are so many different product managers who give more focus to webinars rather than content. So we now take a very sort of a practical approach of researching where our customers are spending most time at and doing things like that. So content has just become one of the things we do, but we now do quite a number of things.
Take one question from Raj, and we're just running late.
Yeah, I just want to try and drill down on how you made the choice of, you had a wide variety of features in the beginning, and then you zoned in specifically on A/B testing. Okay, how did you make that choice? You had many things to go, and why A/B testing?
So in many ways it was sort of arbitrary. Broadly speaking, there was this whole component of Google Analytics or the analytics. I didn't want to go in that direction because it was a very well dominated tool. It was free. On the other hand, this whole A/B testing market back then, it had a tool by Google called Google Website Optimizer, and it was again free, and a lot of people were using it. But as I was researching and reading forums, I realized that everybody was just cribbing about it. Everybody hated it. So there was a single sort of opinion that it's so hard to use. So once this pattern emerged, I thought if we can just make Google Website Optimizer easy to use and call it Visual Website Optimizer, there would be some people out there who would be willing to pay. And a lot of it was also driven by customers or the sort of initial people who gave feedback from Hacker News, and they were again frustrated by this hard A/B testing, and they said, let's solve it. But I would say it was pretty arbitrary. It could have been in another direction, and maybe it would have worked or it would have not. Yeah, it was always with a lot of luck. In hindsight we justify it, but it's luck. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. Give it up for Parash. Okay.